She stomped up my porch, waving a clipboard like it was a badge, and said I was trespassing? Oh, Karen, you picked the wrong dock to mess with. HOA Karen tried to evict me from my lake cabin. Turns out I own the whole lot and their boat dock. Part 1. The knock, the clipboard, and the storm that followed the lake was silent that morning. Only the soft lapping of water against my dock and the hiss of steam curling from my coffee mug as I stood barefoot on my grandfather's porch. That porch? It wasn't just wood and nails. It was memory, history, peace, carved into pine. Then, click, click, click. The unmistakable sound of high heels, not the graceful kind, the sharp, angry kind, stomping across gravel like they owned it. And then, the knock, not gentle, not neighborly. Bang, 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 the kind of knock that carries a threat wrapped in a smile. I turned, and there she was. Karen, short haircut, sunglasses too big for her face, and of course, the clipboard, gripped like it was her weapon of choice. Her smile, all plastic. Her stance, like she thought she was the sheriff. "You must be the squatter," she said. No introduction, no pleasantries, just accusation, like she rehearsed it in the mirror. "Excuse me?" I asked, blinking. She started flipping through her papers like a second-rate prosecutor. "This cabin is on HOA land. You're trespassing. You have 30 days to vacate before we involve the sheriff." And then, she actually handed me a notice, printed on the kind of paper you'd find in a junk drawer, using a font that looked like a passive-aggressive email from 2003. I looked down at it, then up at her, then back down again. And I laughed. Not a big laugh, just the kind you let out when someone tells you the moon is a rental. "Karen," I said slowly, "you're standing on my porch, telling me I'm trespassing." Her lips twitched, like the words slapped her in the face. "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "We've reviewed the map. This lot wasn't officially recorded under a member's name. It belongs to the HOA now, under revised boundary guidelines." She said that last part like it was gospel, like I was supposed to tremble. But I didn't tremble. I took her paper, calmly folded it, and sipped my coffee. "I think you need to brush up on your history, Karen," I said. Then I turned and walked back inside. Behind me, she screamed something about legal action, but I was already laughing by the time I shut the door. Part 2. Grandpa's folder and the deed that shut her up. I didn't slam the door. Didn't need to. I just walked to the kitchen, set my coffee down, and opened my laptop. Buried in a folder labeled Grandpa's Legacy was every paper that mattered. Scanned deed, land titles, old township contracts with ink so faded they looked like ghosts. My grandfather was a quiet man, but he didn't leave loose ends. While the HOA was still scribbling dreams onto napkins at town hall, he'd already bought up the land around the lake, cabin, shoreline, even the boat dock Karen paraded around on every 4th of July, like she was Miss America. Yeah. Not only did I own the cabin she tried to evict me from, I owned the entire lot the HOA claimed in their fantasy boundaries. And the dock? The one she used for her HOA Parade of Unity? Also mine. But the best part? She didn't know about the grandfather clause, an old agreement tucked away in a dusty township file that excluded my property from any and all future HOA jurisdiction. Which meant, even if they wanted to buy the land now, they'd have to get my permission and pay whatever price I named. Spoiler alert, I wasn't selling. Not for money, not for compromise. Because this wasn't about property anymore. It was about principle. That night, as the sun bled across the lake like a slow apology. I sat on the porch, watched the ripples, listened to the whispers, because the neighborhood had already started talking. People passed by on the gravel road, some with confused glances, some with pity. Word was spreading. The guy in the cabin got served a notice. They didn't know the truth yet. But I knew Karen. And Karen? She was already spinning the story, probably telling them I was some squatter who broke in, some drifter ruining the visual harmony of the HOA's lakeside dream. Let her talk, because I had something she didn't. Facts. And I was about to teach her a lesson. In ownership. Part 3. The letter, the lawyer, and the line. Karen crossed 2 days later. It came. Cream-colored envelope. Too fancy to be friendly, too smug to be subtle. Inside, a letter. From the HOA's legal team. Headers in bold. Paragraphs stuffed with legal fluff, and a closing threat wrapped in fake civility. They said I was in violation of HOA code, that I had 30 days to comply, to remove myself from shared land, or face escalating fines and possible legal recourse. I nearly spilled my coffee laughing. Instead, I drafted a reply. Short, sharp, surgical, attached, scanned deed with my name, county maps with their borders, and a beautiful little clause signed in 1981 that declared my property permanently exempt from all HOA governance. Oh, and just for fun, I CC'd a college buddy, now a land rights attorney who once made a real estate developer cry on live radio. Didn't even take an hour. Phone rang. Caller ID, HOA. President. Voice, suddenly polite, suddenly human. Hey, we may have gotten off on the wrong foot, he said, like he'd stepped in something. I let him talk. He rambled about confusion over old maps, how boundaries are tricky. And maybe we could meet for coffee to smooth things out. I smiled. I think we'll let the paperwork do the talking, I said, then hung up. But Karen, she wasn't done. Oh no. The next morning, she marched up my driveway again. This time, with 2 other board members in tow. And a giant map rolled under her arm like she was about to rewrite history. We've revised the layout, she announced smugly, based on the original HOA charter. I invited them onto the dock. Not out of kindness. Out of pure, theatrical revenge. They unrolled their map like it was gospel, pointed to red lines, boundaries they had drawn themselves. I didn't even flinch. I reached into my folder, pulled out a laminated copy of the official land registry, stamped, certified, indisputable. Karen's smile cracked the second she saw it. Because her red line, it cut right through land she didn't own. Karen, I said, slow and steady, I don't think you understand the situation. Then I paused and smiled. You're standing on my dock. She blinked. I pulled out my phone, tapped a video. On screen, footage of her slapping that eviction notice on my porch, smirking like she was in a soap opera. You really thought I wouldn't record this? I asked. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stammered something about legal counsel and stormed off, tripping slightly over her own wedge heel on the way to her golf cart. I didn't stop her. Didn't need to. Because at that point, the war had officially begun, and I had 30 days to make her wish she'd never stepped on my land. Part 4. The sign, the sip, and the spark that lit the fire. The next morning, I stepped out with my coffee, ready for peace. Instead, a bright red sign glared back at me, nailed into the edge of my driveway. All caps, all attitude. HOA notice, non-member trespassing, violation pending. 3 exclamation marks. Karen's favorite kind of punctuation. I didn't rip it down, didn't shout, didn't even blink. I just stood there and coffee in hand, chuckling like I'd just heard a toddler threaten to sue. They were doubling down, and that was exactly what I'd hoped for, because when bullies get scared, they get louder. And Karen? She was screaming into a megaphone that no one had asked her to hold. So I grabbed my phone, snapped a photo of the sign, posted it to the local community Facebook group. Caption: "When people who don't own your land try to tell you to leave it." The comments exploded, laughing emojis, neighbors tagging each other. Someone wrote, "Classic Karen." By lunchtime, I'd received another letter, this one from the HOA's law firm. Apparently, I was now also in violation of improper mailbox placement, unauthorized flag displays, and my personal favorite, non-approved exterior paint color. My cabin, natural wood, same color it had been since 1974. I didn't even respond with words. I just emailed them a high-res scan of my township exemption, then printed out every page of documentation I had, slapped it all into a binder, and labeled it HOA Nonsense, Volume 1, because I wasn't preparing for a debate. I was preparing for an annihilation. Part 5, the meeting, the map, and the moment Karen cracked. That weekend, the HOA called an emergency meeting at their little clubhouse. Word spread fast. And even though they said members only, I showed up anyway, with my binder in one hand and a laminated deed in the other. I didn't go inside. I stood outside the doors, quiet, patient, present. And soon, the whispers started. A couple of residents walked past. One older lady paused, glanced at my paperwork, and asked, "Wait, you really own that land?" I smiled, opened the folder, showed her the stamped boundary maps, the township permits, the original title. Her eyes went wide. She leaned in and whispered, "Karen told us you built that cabin illegally." I handed her a scanned copy of the original construction approval, signed by the township in 1989. "She lies a lot," I said gently. "She's just used to people not pushing back." Inside the clubhouse, voices were rising. I could hear every word through those paper-thin walls. One man shouted, "We're gonna look stupid if we keep this up." Then, a voice that could only be Karen's snapped back, "We're not backing down. He's bluffing." I actually laughed out loud. She had no idea just how deep this trap went. When the meeting ended, Karen stormed out, clipboard clutched like a lifeline. 2 board members behind her, doing their best to pretend they weren't sweating bullets. I raised my coffee mug and called out, "Lovely day, isn't it?" She didn't answer, but one of the board members glanced sideways at the dock they'd parked next to. I saw it in his face. Doubt. They were starting to realize. They weren't fighting some squatter. They were standing on land they didn't even own. And me? I was just getting started. Part 6. The survey, the flags, and the day the dirt told the truth 2 days later. I drove into town with a purpose. I walked straight into the county records office, folder in hand, coffee still warm. The clerk at the counter raised an eyebrow the second she saw my name. "You the guy from the lake?" she asked. I nodded. She smirked, like she'd been waiting for this all week. "You're kind of a local legend now." She handed me what I came for. Certified boundary maps, detailed parcel diagrams, stamped, signed, sealed by the township. I didn't just grab one copy. I printed 5, one for the HOA, one for my lawyer, one laminated and taped to the inside of my cabin door, one for the news, and one for Karen. Because the moment of reckoning was coming. That afternoon, I walked the perimeter of my land, bright orange survey flags in hand. And let me tell you, watching those flags land right through the middle of Karen's prized flower bed was pure poetry. One went up on the trail she liked to call her meditation path. Another, right under the bench where she drank white wine and issued warnings to dog walkers. By evening, half the HOA's decorative signs and even the edge of their beloved clubhouse lawn were poking onto my property. I didn't need to say a word. The flags were louder than a courtroom gavel. And then I made one last call to a news outlet, the same one that ran HOA stories every election season. I pitched them a headline: "Man threatened with eviction. Turns out he owns the HOA's favorite dock." They bit hard. The interview was scheduled for Tuesday morning. I had 3 days to prepare. Karen? She had no idea the camera was coming, but she was about to learn. When you play queen on a board you don't own, you better be ready when the king brings receipts. Part 7. The interview, the footage, and the dock that roared Tuesday morning arrived with a sky so blue, it was like the lake itself was smiling. I stood on my dock, freshly swept, coffee in one hand, flash drive of truth in the other. Right on cue, a white van pulled up on the gravel path, a satellite dish on top, camera gear inside, and a woman with the confident stride of someone about to break the internet. "Morning," she called out, stepping from the van. "You the guy who evicted the HOA from their own dock?" I chuckled. "Something like that." She introduced herself as Jenna, the lead field reporter, cameraman behind her already scoping angles. "Your place is beautiful," she said, scanning the horizon. "Looks like peace finally found you." I nodded slowly. Wasn't easy. But yeah. This dock, it talks now. We set up on the edge, right where Karen once stood with her clipboard. I handed Jenna the folder. Inside, the original deed signed by my grandfather, the township map showing boundaries, the permit giving me sole lakefront easement rights, the video footage of Karen posting signs and yelling at the sheriff. Her eyebrows kept rising higher until she finally said, "This is gold. HOA Karen's worst nightmare and America's new favorite hobby." I laughed, genuinely. Then we rolled. She asked questions. I answered calm, collected, no theatrics. I didn't need to yell. The documents did that for me. But the final punch was a simple drone shot. From above, my dock. Karen's fake sign now gone, and my newly installed wooden board that read, "Private property, since 1989. By the time we wrapped, Jenna said, "This is going viral." And she was right. That night, the clip hit the news. First line: "A man was threatened with eviction until he proved the HOA didn't even own the land they tried to kick him off." Cut to Karen shouting at the sheriff, then me sipping coffee while bolt cutting a padlock. The internet lost it. Comments poured in. "This guy's my new hero. Can someone turn this into a Netflix miniseries? The only HOA I support is his own authority." Even TikTok got involved. There were memes, remixes. One video synced Karen's scream with the Titanic theme. And me? I just watched from the porch. Lemonade in one hand, remote control to the wave machine in the other, just in case. Part 8. The panic, the meeting, and the sign that shut them up by the next morning. The entire town had seen it. The interview, the drone footage, the moment I bolt cut the lock like I was slicing through their lies. Karen? Silent. No Facebook rants, no clipboard selfies, just silence, which meant one thing. They were plotting. That Friday, the HOA called an emergency board meeting. Not publicly, Just hush-hush whispers at the clubhouse. Too bad half the neighborhood already knew. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. I just set up a folding chair on my dock, with a portable speaker playing the news segment on loop. Over and over again. Karen shrieking. Sheriff nodding at me. That wooden sign. Private property. Since 1989. People began to gather. Some brought lawn chairs. One guy brought popcorn. And inside the clubhouse, voices were rising. You said he wouldn't fight back. He made us look like idiots on camera. I told you not to let Karen handle it. Meanwhile, I sipped my coffee, flipped through my binder labeled HOA Clown Files Volume, 2 inches, and waited. Then Karen came storming out, clipboard in hand, of course, red-faced, furious. She marched straight toward the dock, but stopped cold when she saw what I'd put up. A brand new banner, strung between 2 oak posts, big red letters. Welcome to my land, HOA, meetings not permitted. She froze. The neighbors cheered. One woman yelled, Need a mic, Karen? You're losing your audience. Karen looked like she might explode into glitter and spite. Instead, she turned, stomped back to the clubhouse, and slammed the door so hard it knocked a decorative wreath to the ground. By sunset, 3 board members had quietly walked out. One even waved at me on the way to his car. I just nodded and turned the speaker up one last time. Karen's voice crackled through. You'll be hearing from our attorney. Then my voice replied, Good! I'll forward it to mine. The crowd laughed. The dock stayed full. And Karen, she never came back that weekend, because now the HOA didn't just lose a dock, they lost control, and I was just getting started. Part 9, the lawsuit, the town hall, and the clause that crushed Karen. 2 days later, it arrived, a thick envelope, fancy letterhead. Return address? A boutique law firm from 3 towns over. Inside, Karen's last stand. A civil lawsuit, claiming defamation, emotional distress, and get this, public humiliation via wave machine abuse. I nearly spit out my lemonade. She actually included screenshots from the news footage, a photo of her face mid-splash, and a dramatic quote. This woman's community standing has been irreparably damaged. I laughed so hard I had to sit down, but I didn't ignore it. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, the same guy who helped me win the easement case. His reply? This is legally weaker than gas station coffee. We filed a motion to dismiss, attached every deed, video, permit, and easement agreement. And then we added one final document, the HOA's own charter. Buried in their dusty bylaws was a clause Karen never expected anyone to read. It stated, if an HOA board member is found to have acted outside their legal jurisdiction and caused measurable harm to a resident or the HOA itself, that member may be removed via special vote at the next town hall meeting. Boom. The trap was set. We didn't just play defense. We called for a vote. That Thursday night, the town hall was packed, standing room only. Even the mayor showed up. I brought nothing but a folder and a speaker that played Karen's rant on loop until the meeting started. She arrived late. Lip gloss, blazer, and that infamous clipboard. But no power behind her eyes this time. The room quieted, and I stood up, held up the signed easement transfer, read out loud the paragraph granting my family exclusive control of the dock, the lakefront path, and the land beneath the HOA clubhouse patio. People gasped. One man said, "That's half the HOA's event space." Karen started to object, but the moderator stopped her. "Let's vote." They passed out paper ballots. One simple question. Should Karen be removed from the HOA board for overstepping legal boundaries and putting the HOA at risk? The results? 92% voted yes. 2 abstained. One ballot had "By Karen" drawn in glitter pen. She stood there, stunned. Clipboard clutched to her chest like a life vest in a flood of truth. And then, someone in the back started slow clapping. Others joined in. The clap turned to cheers, the cheers into laughter. Karen didn't yell, didn't fight. She just walked out, heels clicking like the end of a chapter. I walked home that night, under the stars, with a copy of the vote in my hand and a smile on my face. Because the HOA didn't just lose a leader. They lost the myth that had kept them powerful. And now, it was time to rebuild. Without her. Part 10. The Legacy, the Sign, and the Lake that Knew Its Owner. The sun rose slow that morning, like even the sky knew something had changed. Karen was gone. Not just from the board, but from the neighborhood. Her house? For sale sign hammered into the lawn by sunrise. No goodbye, no farewell post on the HOA message board, just silence. And one moving truck, rattling down the gravel road like a retreating army. I stood on my dock, coffee in hand, watching the breeze brush across the water like a quiet exhale. And for the first time in months, it felt like peace. Not fragile peace, not temporary silence, but real peace. Earned, fought for, sealed by court documents and public humiliation. I spent the week restoring everything that mattered. Restained the cabin porch, fixed the railings Jason had once built with my grandfather, rehung the carved wooden sign we'd found in the shed, the one that read, "Private Property, since 1989. But I didn't stop there. The back path behind the HOA clubhouse, I fenced it off with a hand-painted notice. Community welcome, but ask first. That's all I ever wanted. Not power, not money, just respect. Word spread fast. Neighbors who once whispered now waved. Kids rode bikes past the dock with wide eyes and shouted, "That's him! That's the guy from the story!" Even the mayor sent me a handwritten thank you note, commending me for defending community integrity. But the one that got me? A card slipped under my door one evening, no name, just a simple message. Thank you for standing your ground. You reminded all of us what home is supposed to feel like. I stared at it for a long time. Then I walked down to the water, kicked off my shoes, and stepped into the lake. Not to fight, not to film, not to prove anything, just to float. To let the weight of it all dissolve beneath the surface. Because this wasn't just about beating the HOA, it was about reclaiming something that should have never been up for debate. Legacy, land, peace. And as the water rippled around me, stars rising overhead like silent witnesses, I knew one truth louder than any HOA rule book. The lake always knew who it belonged to. Epilogue. The cabin, the calm, and the echo of something earned weeks past. And with each sunrise, the cabin settled deeper into its rightful rhythm. There were no more letters taped to my door, no more laminated threats, no more clipboards flashing like weapons in the hands of power-hungry neighbors. Just the rustle of trees, the slap of fish tails against still water, and the creak of the dock under my feet as I sipped my morning coffee. That lake? It wasn't just mine by deed anymore. It was mine in memory, mine in spirit, mine in the quiet way neighbors nodded when passing by, and the knowing smiles they offered, like we'd all lived through a shared legend. The old HOA board? Resigned, replaced, forgotten by most. Except when the punchline of a good story called for a name to blame. Karen? Vanished. Rumor has it she moved 3 counties over, tried to start a community composting committee, and was rejected after someone found a clip of her screaming, "You're standing on HOA property!" at a pelican. I didn't follow up. I had better things to do, like repainting the bench my grandfather built, or hanging a new sign by the trail that read, "Welcome, friend. Shoes optional. Drama not allowed." The town? It healed, slowly, like a bruise fading beneath sunlight and laughter. Barbecues returned, kids played by the water again, and the phrase HOA Karen became something you joked about, not feared. One day, I found a new carving beside the dock. Someone had taken a pocket knife to the old post. 4 words, small and clean. "He made it ours again." I ran my thumb over it and smiled, because they were wrong about one thing. I didn't just reclaim land. I reclaimed peace, community, and the unshakable truth that sometimes the quietest people fight the hardest.